a radical fusion of captivating design, all-inclusive hospitality, and world-changing conservation, Shinta Mani Wild places you in the midst of Southeast Asia's last untouched wilderness. From the moment you arrive in Cambodia, which includes an entrance to the hotel via a 400-meter zip line, guests can expect a life-changing experience designed to connect you with nature in the most experiential of outdoor hospitality destinations. Guests are partnered with an adventure butler who handles day-to-day itineraries, and are provided a luxurious old-world tent designed to safely immerse oneself in nature via the mind of world-renowned designer Bill Bensley. Hi, I'm Bobby Marsden, and welcome to the Glamptuary Podcast, where we talk about the experiential outdoor hospitality industry and sustainable lifestyles. In episode 3, we sat down with Bill Bensley, a designer of over 200 hospitality destinations and a big believer in sustainability and conservation. We learned about Bill's journey, which started back in Orange County, California, and has led him to his current home in Thailand. Bill talks about the importance of sustainability and design and how those methodologies can help shape the future of the outdoor hospitality industry. So sit back, relax, and enjoy episode 3 on season 3 of the Glamptuary Podcast. Bill Bensley, welcome to the Glamptuary Podcast. Super excited to talk with you.
Thank you very much, Bobby. It's a pleasure. Yeah.
Now, Bill, before we get into Shinta Mani, I want to know about this art studio. You obviously have paint on you and around you. Where are you right now?
It's on the weekends. I spend most of the weekend, actually 12 hours a day, painting up a storm. Since COVID, I learned how to paint, and I cannot put the paintbrush down now.
Well, tell me a little bit about the paintings, and are you just doing it for pleasure? Are you selling them? Is it for use in locations?
I paint probably a painting every couple of weeks, and I've been selling through 6 different galleries all over Southeast Asia.
Congratulations.
And since I started, we 100% of what we sell the paintings for and such goes towards the Shinta Mani Foundation. That's based in Siem Reap in Cambodia. And we do a whole number of things out of that foundation. And that is, we're doing education for 35 kids, young adults per year for the last 17 years.
Wow.
We do conservation work in association with Wildlife Alliance and Shinta Mani Wild. So, of course, that takes a lot of money, too, because we hire something like 17 rangers that actually are on the Shinta Mani Wild, which sits in the cardamom rainforest, which is in the south portion of Cambodia. And it's Southeast Asia's largest rainforest and is responsible really for creating the rain of the rice bowl, which is Thailand, Laos, Cambodia, and Vietnam. So if that's gone and it is disappearing very quickly, then we will have problems growing rice here. And we provide housing for the poorest of poor. And much of that money comes from these paintings.
Well, they're fabulous, and I'm not surprised at all. And Shinta Mani Wild truly is what drew me to you and why I wanted to have you on the podcast, partly to talk about that property because it looks fantastic from what I saw online. And I also, your background in outdoor hospitality is another thing I want to dive into as well. But because you brought up Shinta Mani Wild, let's start there. I would say one thing I noticed when I was doing some research on it is the entrance to Shinta Mani Wild, which is a zip line, which I've never heard of as far as introducing guests to a hotel through a zip line. And this is obviously one of your designs, but if you were to describe Shinta Mani Wild to a potential person who is not familiar with outdoor hospitality, how would you describe it?
Actually, Shinta Mani is exactly what I would design for myself as a playground. It's a place of adventure and a place to explore really beautiful corner of the earth. So I came up with this idea of being able to climb a 10-story building, basically, and make a zip line entrance into what is Southeast Asia's longest zip line, across a giant waterfall. You go down a whole series of training bridges and so forth, and then across another big waterfall, and you land in what we call the landing zone, and you're given the beverage of your choice. More often, it's a giant gin and tonic. And then from there, everything is good. Everyone loves that. Yeah, Shinta Mani very much is experience. It's all about experiences. In fact, we have an adventure menu and adventure butlers that will keep you busy for 10 days straight without doing the same thing twice. And that was, honestly, that was the best part about building this project is to trying to figure out all of these adventures.
It looks fantastic. And when you're not adventuring, what can you expect as far as your place to lay your head and take a rest after all these adventures?
Well, we have hundreds and hundreds of hectares of land there. And so it occupies this giant valley. And it is about 4.5 kilometers of river. And I put tents which have giant bathtubs and so forth outside on the deck, and tents that are spaced all the way down the river, and so that you can't see from one tent to another. So you feel like you're the only people on the planet, but you feel safe. So in the 1960s, when a lot of bad things were happening in Vietnam and such, Jackie Onassis actually visited the king of Cambodia. And I took that story and said, well, what if King Sihanouk, who was the king at the time, had invited Jackie Onassis when she came to Cambodia, actually to go on a camping trip, right? And so it would have been, the best that Cambodia could have afforded at the time. And thus our whole camp is set up with things of the 60s. For example, when you first arrive way far away, way down the valley, our road is tiny. So we have to change from the more modern SUVs and so forth that you get to the place from the airport. We changed into 1968 USA Army vehicles with an open top and so forth, right? And they are just rattling, but they really work on these super muddy roads that do this, right? And so that whole experience of getting into this Army Jeep takes you back in time to the 1960s. And they're all completely authentic because there's still a lot of those Jeeps around. And it's and as you go through the camp, I have populated it with all sorts of furniture and cutlery and plates and knives and all these things that we've repurposed from the 60s, trying to emulate what it would have been like for King Sihanouk to take Jackie Onassis on safari.
As I'm hearing you describe Shinta Mani Wild, it sounds like you've put a lot of yourself into it and you seem very adventurous. Have you been this adventurous your entire life?
Well, I haven't gone to 105 countries and counting without being adventurous. So, yeah. And next year we'll probably get that up to 110, 115. So,
yeah. So you grew up in Orange County, California, and I think you did. I think you did. I could be wrong.
I did a long time ago.
What got you into design? When was that connection for you, and where did you start to study it, and then how did you put that into practice?
Well, yeah, growing up, I was very much into gardening. Grew up. My mom and dad were English immigrants via Canada. They came to Southern California. Had my sister in England, my brother in Canada, and me in America. And we grew up on a small farm in Orange County. And so I learned all about gardening. I learned about vegetables. I learned about sustainability. That combined with my art classes, right? Uh, my counselors in high school said, "Well, why don't you try landscape architecture?" I went home that day, and I said to my dad, "Hey, Dad, I'm going to be a landscape architect. What do you think about that?" And he slammed his hand on top of the dinner table and says, "No son of mine's going to be a gardener." I said, "Oh." Cal Poly Pomona, to answer your question, Bobby. Cal Poly Pomona, and then got a degree in landscape architecture, won an ASLA Best Student in America award, and then a full ride to Harvard. So, and then that's where I met people of the Asian ilk, and then that led me to a lifetime in Asia.
And I know that you've designed over 200 properties globally, and it sounds like a majority of your focus is in Asia. I mean, is that just kind of your favorite spot to do these kinds of experiential outdoor hospitality designs, or are there other places on planet Earth that you like to work on as well?
Well, since 1984, been based in both Bali and Bangkok.
Mm-hmm.
This is my office in Bangkok, my studio, my home, actually. And because of sheer proximity, the majority of our work is in Asia, but we have, I've got work in the Caribbean and New Hampshire, in London. I'm working on something in Mayfair, in Australia. Done work all over the world. So, but primarily, it's closer to home. It's a little easier to manage.
Yeah, that makes total sense. In working on all these different places, have you noticed that there's one that just seems to lend itself more to this type of destination, or it's easier to get it done there? Or is there one perhaps that you found is a lot more challenging to try and create these and design these types of hospitality destinations?
So your question is what's the difference really between the West and the East as far as experiences are concerned? Probably not a lot in that, but what's really critical is to be in the wilderness. And because Asia has a lot more people than, the Americas, for example, or Australia, it's a lot more difficult to find wilderness left. Right? We are working on something that's really interesting now in a place called the French Congo, which is not to be misconstrued with the Belgian Congo, which is extremely dangerous. And we're doing a tented camp there, way up on stilts, 8-meter up on stilts, in a wonderful place called the Tri-National Park, which is part of Cameroon, Central African Republic in the Congo. And it's 8 meters up on stilts so that the forest elephants can walk underneath.
Cool.
There are more gorillas there and gorilla families. I visited, I've been going there for many, many years now, then way more than Rwanda. But there's zero tourism there. So that we are very fortunate to be able to be the first ones into what David Attenborough describes as the world's last great wilderness. Jane Goodall described it as the place she would much have rather have studied chimpanzees than Tanzania. So my work takes me to really fantastically remote places. And that, Bobby, is the key to creating experiential hospitality.
One thing that's very important to me is connecting with nature. And obviously, I think that's what you mean by these experiences, and being able to introduce the general public to things that they would never be able to experience, but now they're able to experience in a safe place. As you said, Shinta Mani Wild has the wild feeling, but it's done in a safe way. I know sustainability is a big thing for you. So sensible, sustainable solutions, I believe, was the white paper that you wrote. And I also found something. It was a note to hotel owners, and I want to read it to you because I love it. But I want to ask you how you think this is working, currently. But you wrote, "My dream is that hotel owners like myself can begin to incorporate some of these sensible, sustainable ideas into hotels, as they will save you money. My hope is that all hotels of the future are not just places to sleep, but places of purpose that make our world richer." Read on. And I would encourage everyone that's listening and watching this to find this. And I'll have a link on the podcast page. But when you wrote that, what inspired you to write that? Because it really just kind of come across like a proclamation, like you saw something, you noticed something, you wanted to make a change. But I'm curious, what inspired you to write that?
Well, there was beginning to be, this is about 5 years ago, maybe a little bit long before COVID, and people were beginning to wake up and associate, the demise of our planet with hospitality. So, of course, that rung a bell. And I remember here at the house, one morning about 4:00 in the morning, I woke up and said, I'm going to go to the office today and go through all of our project standards. Now, Project Standard is a book, about 400 or 500 pages thick, that is issued by hospitality companies like Hyatt and Hilton, et cetera, and to architects like me, to be able to understand what it is that they need to differentiate Hyatt from Hilton, to differentiate it. Those are the things that I need to understand as a designer about how they want to build something. And so I went through, and I've been doing this hospitality design now for 40 years, so I've got a stack about taller than me, and I'm 6'4". And I went through that day. I went through everything that we had, and for the most part, there was nothing about sustainability. There was nothing about how to build things appropriately. And for years before this, I had been building, projects that, because of my landscape architecture background, that influenced very much my architecture. I was building projects that were both sensitive to where we were building, but also understanding things about shade and making buildings more sensibly functionable, sustainable.
Yeah.
So I read all of these, and then I said to myself, it's pulling my hair out that, there's all this talk about environmentalism and so forth, but no one's doing anything. So I wrote this really long 50-page thesis, and then a few people read it and they fell asleep by page 12. And so I illustrated it and then boiled all those things down, all those main ideas down to about 10, 12 pages. And that's what I sent out to about 850 hotel companies. And some completely ignored me, and then but for the most part, people really popped on it and said, "Hey, this is really good. Thanks a lot, Bill, and we'll put these into our standards and so forth." And they rewrote it, put it in their own words, and so forth. And I think that has really helped a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, good on you that you put that out there. And when you look at the future of experiential hospitality, do you see sustainability taking hold more? Do you see more people gravitating to that? Because you said something in that letter that said this will save you money. And I think for hoteliers, sometimes that's what clicks for them. But what did you mean by this will save you money?
95%, 98% of the only way to get things that are more sustainable in is if you can convince your client. I have a lot of clients that eventually they're going to save money and it'll make them money. So, things like solar power and such. And that's pretty much a no-brainer. At the time when I wrote that, there was, 16 billion water bottles that produce, and still in the States, I know that there's unnecessary plastic being produced. So I write in the paper about how to, as we do in my own hotels, how to completely turn your back on, disposable, single-use plastics.
Mm-hmm.
All of those things, all those little things save you money, right? And it's just, maybe they're more difficult to do, but they will save you money. And over the years since then, I've convinced so many clients to save money that way. In fact, Accor, which is probably one of the largest hotel groups in the world, I've made for them a 200-room hotel, and we didn't use big plastic televisions. I convinced them not to use them, right? Because nobody uses it. So, but it's our standard. Well, I said the standard, right? Let's do something different. And it was a place associated with a Buddhist monastery, so it seemed very appropriate for them. But to it's little things like that. In all of my hotels, they don't have any televisions and so forth. It's all about getting people out, right?
It's a small change, a big impact. I mean, those are always the best decisions to make. What's the next project that you have that's exciting for you? Do you have anything that's about to break ground, or are you in the middle of a project that's really exciting you right now?
There's a wonderful project that is going to finish next year, and it is on the Pachola Lake in Udaipur, which is in Rajasthan, India. And while I've done a lot of work there, I've done all the villa project for Oberoi, Raj Villas, Uday Villas, Amar Villas, etc. This is a 85-room super luxurious palace on the lake overlooking, this is where they filmed Octopussy and such, overlooking the Taj. And it is a 17th century sandstone palace with walkways sometimes not even 2 foot wide.
Wow.
And it is a maze, right? And it's a maze on purpose because all those palaces also had to be forts too, and they had to be easily defendable, so that they would create these very narrow passageways and that had windows in them so that they could be defended. So that is, I think that's going to hit the market next year with a real bang. I think that, and each room is different. All 85 rooms filled with paintings and sculpture and so forth that I've been collecting for years. I think that's going to be a real neat project. And then what's really exciting in my life right now is that I'm doing my first really big collaboration with an American firm. And next fall, I'm going to go to a place called High Point in North Carolina, and to launch my first furniture.
Really?
My furniture show, yeah. I'm launching my first. We've been designing furniture for a long time, but I've never taken it commercially. But there's a company called Baker and McGuire, and they do the highest end of furniture in the States. and they've asked me to design a line for them, in which we've designed a line of 75 pieces. But the really cool thing about this, Bobby, is that each piece of furniture is reminiscent or takes inspiration from one of the endangered animals of the cardamom rainforest in Cambodia.
Oh, wow.
So, for
That's
example, the sofas look like the Cambodian river otter, right?
Nice.
And cute and cuddly and so forth. And then some of our coffee tables, they take inspiration from the terrapin or the turtle. And our lamps, they take inspiration from the very much endangered pangolin with the pangolin scales and so forth. And once again, 100% of my cut, which is cut I get a percentage of the overall sales. 100% of that goes towards the Shinta Mani Foundation for education, for the infant milk programs that we have, the teaching of English, the schools that we have, and also the conservation. Very much so.
I think everything that you're doing sounds awesome, and I love that you apply your design aesthetic into so many different things and ways that drive traffic back to what seems to drive you the most, which is conservation, sustainability, and giving back to the community that you're also supporting. And so to me, that's truly what the definition of sustainability is. It's not just eco-conservation or solar panels. It's about a sustainable structure and how you help the infrastructure. And so I really applaud everything that you're doing. And I don't want to take you away from your painting anymore, so I'm going to thank you for your time. I really enjoyed talking with you.
Okay, thanks so much, Bobby. Bye for now.
I'd like to thank Bill for his time and all of his efforts in conservation and sustainability. You are truly walking the walk, Bill, and we thank you for that. If you'd like to learn more about Bill and his collection of hotels under Shinta Mani, you can do so on the website, which is www.shintamani.com. That is www.shintamani.com. And if you'd like to follow along on the Glamptuary Podcast, you can do so on our official website, which is www.glamptuary.com. That is www.glamptuary.com. And you can also follow along on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Pandora Podcasts, and Amazon Podcasts, all under the Glamptuary Podcast. Until we see you on the next episode, be well and namaste.